I want you to be here when I get back from practice later. And I want you to be here when I come home from my game tonight.
What's up, guys? I just want to talk about Scott and Kip, okay, from Heated Rivalry. I specifically want to talk about Scott's confession to Kip. I'm not going to go into their whole relationship in this video. I just want to mainly talk about Scott's confession and whether it was romantic or intense. So, if you're watching this, you probably know the story between Scott and Kip and how they met, but I'm going to briefly recap. So, they meet at the cafe in New York City, and there's an obvious attraction there, right? But Kip doesn't know that Scott's a famous hockey player yet. But he does find out later. And so they meet up at the cafe a few times, like maybe a handful of times. I want to say maybe 3 or 4. But there's flirting, there's attraction, like all that good stuff. Then we get to the part where Scott invites Kip to a hockey game, one of his hockey games, and of course he gives him the best seats, right? Of course. And then the next time they meet up was at that event, that fancy event where Kip runs into Scott with a bunch of food and it gets all over him, and Scott's like, "Oh, it's okay, don't worry about it," and stuff like that. Just completely unfazed. um, and then Scott invites Kip out to dinner. They change their mind, and then Kip goes to Scott's place, and then they sleep together. And then the next morning, we have our confession, okay? So, not a lot happened before this big, emotionally loaded confession. I feel like they didn't spend that much time together. Like, let's really look at this, okay? They, they met up in the cafe a few times. They flirted, they talked to each other and stuff like that. But the next time, like, we see them together, like, was in the was it a restaurant? I don't know. That fancy event or party or whatever. And then they're in Scott's place. Like, that's the only time that they were together. Like, I'm talking about one on one. Like, so if we're looking at it like that, and then we look at this confession here, not a lot happened between these two, like, realistically. So I was watching this confession again, and I appreciate that Scott is self-aware, and he warns Kip in the beginning, and he's like, "Hey, people tell me I can be intense and, and stuff like that." I appreciate that, you know. Um, but he's like, "I want you, and I want you to stay, and I want you to be here when I come back, and I want you to be here after my game." And, all I it's just, if I were Kip, right? I'm not gonna lie, I would be a little bit overwhelmed. Or not a little. I would be majorly overwhelmed, but we'll talk about what I think later, right? Now, it's fine to express your feelings, like, but I think the way he said it, like, like, there's nothing wrong, but I think it's the way you tell somebody you like them matters, and how much time has passed, and your relationship between that person. Like, how much do you know that person? Because Scott and Kip barely know each other. They don't really know each other. Kip knows that Scott is a hockey player, and I'm sure Scott knows that Kip likes art, but they don't really know each other, you know. Now, if Scott would have been like, hey, I really like you and I want to spend more time with you and get to know you, I feel like that would have been more appropriate for the time, right? Because they're barely even friends yet, but um I think it would have been more appropriate. Like there's nothing wrong with expressing affection, attraction, desire, intimacy and stuff like that a little bit early on, but I think where it gets intense is going too fast, talking about big commitments early on, putting emotional weight on the other person and saying like, I want you I haven't wanted anything like this in a long time. And listen, some people might be flattered by this. Some people might be like, "Oh my god, really?" Like, um I think Kip was very flattered by all of this. I think Kip felt probably like similar. I'm not going to say exactly the same, but he probably felt similar like, oh, I really like this guy and I want to see him more and I want to hang out with him more and be around him more. I get the intensity of a new relationship or a new person. But there is a point where it goes from being romantic to being too intense and overwhelming. Um, so, in my personal opinion, I think Scott was being a little bit too intense for the amount of time that has passed between these two. Um, there's nothing. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the attraction or the desire or confessing those things, but I think it's maybe the way that he said it or the way that he was coming off. It did seem a little bit intense for me, right? That's my opinion, right? Someone might be like, "Oh, I would love if somebody said that to me after a week," or but if someone said that to me after we barely even hung out, I would be like, yeah, I hear you, but can we slow down just a little bit, like just a little bit, can um so yeah, I like Scott and Kip as a couple. um I didn't really go more into their relationship as a whole in this video because I mainly wanted to focus on Scott's confession. But I really like Scott and Kip as a couple. That's why I rewatch episode 3. Not a lot, but I go back to it. I actually go back to episode 3 more than I go back to the other episodes between Shane and Ilya. Um, because I have my own opinion about Shane and Ilya and how their relationship developed, but I can save that for another video. So I don't think there's anything wrong with having feelings for someone early on, and yeah, those feelings can be intense, yeah, but I think maybe slowing down would probably be beneficial in my opinion because, like I said, these two barely know each other, and Scott already wants to be all over Kip, and Kip already wants to be all over Scott. And I get it, it's hot, it's steamy, you want to see, but I'm just being real. Like, for me, I would have been like, slow down, please. Okay. But hey, that's just my opinion. Okay. Let me know what y'all think in the comments. I'm curious about it. Thanks for listening.